Adam Schiff set a 62-page document on the table and didn't say a word. FBI Director Kash Patel sat across from him, 4 lawyers behind him, that confident posture he always has. But something moved behind Patel's eyes when Schiff opened the second folder. Not fear, calculation. The calculation of a man measuring distance to an exit that no longer exists. The document showed an appointment. Dan Bongino, fired from FBI Deputy Director on February 28th for failing a polygraph, reappointed March 11th as Special Counterterrorism Envoy. 11 days. The appointment bears Patel's signature. Schiff asked one question. What legal review was completed in those 11 days before a fired official who failed his security screening was given a diplomatic role with classified access? Patel had no answer, and Schiff had 47 more documents Patel had tried to hide. February 28, 2026. The firing was public. Dan Bongino, FBI Deputy Director, Trump loyalist, former Secret Service agent turned podcaster turned FBI official, removed after internal investigation revealed he'd failed his polygraph examination. Questions about foreign contacts. Questions about undisclosed financial relationships. The polygrapher recommended immediate termination. The coverage was loud for exactly 3 days. Then it stopped. Not because the story ended, because something bigger replaced it. Operation Sentinel Dawn, a $900 million counterterrorism initiative, announced March 1st. 6 days of wall-to-wall coverage about overseas operations, intelligence coordination, national security priorities. Zero coverage about what happened in the 11 days between Bongino's firing and his reappointment. That's where this story lives. March 19th, 2026. House Intelligence Committee Oversight Hearing. The session was scheduled for 90 minutes. Standard oversight, budget review, routine questions for an FBI director who'd spent months perfecting the art of saying everything while answering nothing. But this morning was different. Adam Schiff had a folder Patel hadn't seen, and the first page was an appointment document with a name that shouldn't be there. Patel arrived at 9:47 a.m. with 4 aides and 3 attorneys. His posture said he'd done this before. His hands settling on the table said something else, the small motion of someone grounding himself before turbulence. Schiff was already watching. The chairman opened with procedural remarks. 3 minutes on the committee's jurisdiction over FBI appointments. 2 minutes on the director's role in confirming special positions. 1 minute on the nature of today's questions. By the time he finished, every lawyer in the room understood exactly where this was going. Patel was the last to understand, or at least the last to show it. Schiff had been building this for weeks. A congressional subpoena issued 8 weeks prior, requesting all documentation related to Bongino's removal and any subsequent employment discussions. The subpoena had been partially honored. Partially. What arrived was a privilege log, a document listing what had been withheld and why. The log had 47 entries, all marked with the same protection code, all originating from one office, the FBI director's. Something moved behind Patel's eyes when Schiff opened the second folder. Not fear, the calculation of a man realizing the exit no longer exists. Director Patel, Schiff began, voice measured. I want to ask you about an appointment made on March 11th, 2026. He pulled out a document and set it flat on the table, face up. The signature line was visible from the cameras. This is the official appointment document designating Dan Bongino as Special Counterterrorism Envoy to the State Department. The appointment is dated March 11th. His termination as FBI Deputy Director was February 28th. That's 11 days. Schiff paused. This document bears your signature. Can you explain to this committee what legal review process was completed in those 11 days before a removed FBI official who failed his security screening was reappointed to a role that carries top secret/SCI clearance access? Patel looked at the document. He looked at his attorneys. Both had the same expression. There was no answer that would improve this situation. He looked back at Schiff. The appointment was made following appropriate executive branch protocols. Any further details involve ongoing national security considerations. Schiff set the privilege log beside the appointment document. Director, this is the privilege log you submitted in response to our subpoena. It lists 47 documents related to Mr. Bongino's employment status, all withheld under executive privilege protection, all originating from your office. He looked at Patel. You're telling this committee you can't discuss the legal review process for rehiring someone who failed a polygraph. But you signed the appointment document. Your office withheld 47 documents about it. Which is it, Director? Did you review the appointment or didn't you? Patel's jaw tightened. The appointment process was consistent with executive branch authority. That's not what I asked. Schiff pulled out a third document. This is the security clearance reactivation record. It shows Mr. Bongino's top secret/SCI access was reinstated on March 9th, 2 days before the appointment, 11 days after he was fired for failing the security screening that grants that access. He set it next to the other documents. Director Patel, how does someone who fails a polygraph about foreign contacts get their security clearance reinstated 11 days later? Patel's hands pressed flat on the table. Security clearance decisions are handled through appropriate channels. Which channels reviewed a fired official's clearance eligibility? Schiff interrupted. Specifically, which channels determine that someone who showed deception on questions about foreign contacts should have access to the nation's most sensitive intelligence? The process followed standard protocols. Schiff leaned forward. Director, there's nothing standard about any of this. Let me walk through the timeline for the committee. He pulled out a fourth document, a timeline his office had compiled. February 28th, Dan Bongino fired as FBI Deputy Director after failing polygraph. March 1st, Operation Sentinel Dawn announced, $900 million counterterrorism initiative dominates news for 6 days. March 9th, Bongino's security clearance quietly reactivated. March 11th, Bongino appointed special counterterrorism envoy. You signed the appointment. Schiff looked up. And when we subpoenaed the documents explaining this process, you withheld 47 of them. Director, that's not protocol. That's a pattern. The room went silent. Patel's right hand had shifted forward slightly, the body finding anchor when ground becomes uncertain. Congressman, personnel decisions are made based on operational needs. Was it an operational need? Schiff interrupted. Or was it a directive from the president? Patel's jaw worked. I don't discuss conversations with... I'm not asking about conversations. Schiff pulled out another document. This is a Truth Social post from March 7th. President Trump tagged you and wrote, Bongino was treated unfairly. Witch hunt. He'll be back where he belongs soon. He set the post printout on the table. 4 days later, you signed the appointment. So I'll ask again, was this an operational need or were you following orders? Patel looked at his attorneys. One leaned forward to whisper. Patel shook his head slightly. The appointment was made in accordance with 47 documents, Schiff said quietly. You withheld 47 documents explaining this appointment. If everything was proper, if protocols were followed, why hide the paperwork? No answer. Schiff continued. Let me tell you what I think those documents show. I think they show that Dan Bongino was removed because he failed a mandatory security screening. I think they show that someone, probably the president, ordered you to find a way to bring him back. I think they show you created a position, reactivated his clearance despite the polygraph failure, and appointed him to a role that gives him access to the exact intelligence he was deemed unfit to see. He paused. And I think you withheld 47 documents because they prove all of that. Patel sat motionless. Schiff pulled out one more document. Here's what troubles me most, Director. This is the creation date for the Special Counterterrorism Envoy position. January 15th, 2026. He looked at Patel. Dan Bongino was still FBI Deputy Director on January 15th. The position was created 6 weeks before he was fired. Was this role created specifically for him? Patel's attorney stood. Mr. Chairman, these questions involve sensitive national security matters. Sit down, the chairman said. Your client can answer or invoke privilege. Those are his options. The attorney sat. Director Patel, Schiff said, was the special counterterrorism envoy position created as a landing spot for Dan Bongino in case he was fired? Silence. 67 seconds of it. The cameras captured every second. The stenographer stopped typing. There was nothing to type. Finally, Patel spoke. Staffing contingencies are developed for operational continuity. That's a yes, Schiff said flatly. You created a backup job for him before he was even fired. Then when the polygraph failure forced you to terminate him, you waited 11 days, just long enough for the news cycle to move on, and reappointed him with his clearance reinstated. He gathered his documents. Director Patel, this committee requested transparency. You gave us obstruction. We requested documents. You withheld 47. We requested an explanation. You gave us bureaucratic double talk. Schiff's voice hardened. The record is clear. Dan Bongino failed a security screening. You fired him. The president demanded he be brought back. You complied. And now he has access to classified intelligence, despite being deemed a security risk by your own polygraphers. He looked at the committee chairman. I move that we hold Director Patel in contempt for failure to comply with a lawful congressional subpoena. And I move that we refer the Bongino appointment to the Inspector General for investigation into potential security violations. Within hours, hashtag the 11-day window was trending. The timeline circulating, the 47 withheld documents, the polygraph failure, the reappointment, the Truth Social post, and Kash Patel's signature on the document that proved he'd followed Trump's orders instead of FBI security protocols. Sometimes obstruction isn't what you say, it's what you hide. And Patel hid 47 documents that told the whole story.